We're back to talk about Record Store Day. So guess what? The Black Friday 2023 Record Store Day release list just came out today. There are 17 titles that are in the jazz space, and as usual on this channel, we talk about that type of music. So I'm going to focus in on each of these 17, talk to you about what they are, how many are going to be released in each, so that we can talk about or sort of determine scarcity. I'll talk a little bit about the music and sort of give you my thoughts on what I would be interested in picking up out of this list of 17. Before we dive into it, as always, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, and follow me on Instagram at what_can_brown. All right, so the first one is Chet Baker, and the title is Chet's Choice. We've had a lot of Chet Baker, it feels like to me, over the last couple of years in terms of record store days. I don't know if it's because of the energy for Chet Baker Sings that came out on Tone Poet, but in any event, whatever it is, people apparently want to hear more Chet Baker. This one is a little bit later in his career, and therefore for me is a little bit less exciting. I tend to prefer his earlier stuff, but for folks who like Chet Baker, they're going to want to seek this one out. So it was originally put out on Crisscross Records, and it is being presented here by Elemental Music. They are doing the reissue. This is a double LP release, and it's a quantity of 2,300, which I would say is neither mass release nor is it ultra scarce in terms of record store day releases. So let's see why they were able to stretch this to double LPs when the first original pressing came out in a single LP. Well, it includes all 7 tracks from the original album, plus 3 songs that didn't make it, plus some alternate takes. So again, more Chet Baker for people who like Chet Baker. This is going to be in a gatefold jacket, as you might expect from a double LP, and it is on 180 gram. Second one up is a title by Marion Brown and Wadada Leo Smith, and the title of this album is called Creative Improvisation Ensemble. This is being released by ORG Music. It is a single LP release in a quantity of 1,400. So in the grand scheme of things, that one is actually going to be quite scarce, right? Not every store will probably get a copy, and the ones that do may only get one. 1,400 is pretty low quantity in terms of record store day releases. This was originally recorded in 1970 in Paris. This particular release is remastered by Dave Gardner, pressed at Palace, and it is going to be presented on translucent red vinyl. This is the first reissue, I believe, of this title since 1975. Now, don't get me wrong, it was released in a variety of countries in 1975, but I do think this is the first vinyl reissue. So, I'm actually a huge fan of Marion Brown, as well as Leo Smith. One reason why, one thing you should consider when you're thinking about this particular title is that this is really sort of full-blown free jazz experimental kind of stuff. I personally tend to prefer the work that Marion Brown put out on like Impulse, right? Maybe some of his earlier stuff. This one is definitely going to be a little bit more experimental, and so if you like that type of music, great, then you'll enjoy this record. The next one up is Dave Brubeck Quartet, and it is titled Live from the Northwest, 1959. So this is actually being put out by Brubeck Editions, which is the family-run label. I feel like I see this more and more frequently, that sometimes the original estate or sort of family-run labels are choosing to release music rather than farming it out, say, to the big guys, right? To the big labels. And so this is an example of that, where the Brubeck family is running this label and putting this out. They are promising great sound quality. In fact, even claiming it to be audiophile sound quality for this particular release. It was recorded at a couple of locations. There was the Multnomah Jazz Club and then at Clark College. Both of these venues were in Oregon. The lineup in this quartet includes Paul Desmond, Eugene Wright, and Joe Morello, and it's a single LP being put out in a quantity of 3,500. So Dave Brubeck Quartet in 1959 is a pretty good time period to be able to hear, I would say, live music from the group that was recording some of their sort of most popular, most famous albums. I took a look at the track list, and I didn't necessarily see maybe some of the obvious choices that you might expect to see, like Take 5, that type of thing. I didn't see those, but at the same time, this again was one of the most one of Brubeck's periods of time where he was the most popular, and therefore, you could probably expect a well-rehearsed, well-practiced, and energetic group that's playing music. And if it's being chosen by the family for this release, it's probably going to be a good set. All right, so there are a couple of titles in this list that I actually own copies of, and one such example is this next one, and that is Iron Man by Eric Dolphy. So this is originally put out on the Douglas label. It was actually put out very soon after by... I can't remember, but they completely redid the cover. Anyway, this is the original cover, and this is what they are sort of representing for this Record Store Day release. Pretty great lineup on here. You got Richard Davis, Clifford Jordan, Huey Simmons, also Sonny Simmons, right? Prince Lasha, Woody Shaw, Bobby Hutcherson, Eddie Kahn, and J.C. Moses. Just 5 tracks here. It's a really great album, actually, and so I'm pretty excited that they decided to tackle that and tackle it again. And who is they? In this case, it's Culture Factory USA. I don't know that much about that label, but they're putting it out. It is a single LP edition in a quantity of 2,200. They're deciding to go for an Obi strip on this thing, which I'm seeing more and more frequently in Record Store Day releases. They're trying to sort of add an extra, or instead of adding, say, a hype sticker on the shrink, more labels seem to be going for the Obi. I think folks who follow my channel know that I'm not really that much of a fan of an Obi. I think it gets in the way and it's kind of hard to see the artwork, but it is what it is. They're becoming more popular. This edition is going to be on color vinyl, so know that as well, and I think they're going for gold. So I have to point it out every time, what is a Record Store Day without Bill Evans? Guess what? We've got some more Bill Evans, and this title is called Tales, Live in Copenhagen, recorded in 1964, and as usual, this is being put out by Elemental Music. This particular edition is a single LP, in contrast to perhaps some of the other ones. I think they've been doing some double LPs. This is going to be in a quantity of 3,650, so a relatively, high-pressing title, because there's a lot of folks who love Bill Evans. There's a lot of folks who are collecting Bill Evans in this particular Elemental series, and they're going to want to jump on this. It's going to be 180 grams. It's going to come with a booklet. The lineup includes Chuck Israels on bass and Larry Bunker on drums, which is that's a fantastic way to hear the Bill Evans trio. And in terms of in terms of what's on it, it combines studio and live stuff with 2 versions of 4 of the songs. So it's, for folks who like Bill Evans, they're going to want to kind of hear those differences and hear how he explores some different pieces. I always say this in these review videos or in these Record Store Day sort of forecast videos. I just think that they're milking the archives for like in any way they can. They're just trying to put everything out, and for me, with higher quantity comes more skepticism in terms of not whether I'll enjoy it, because Bill Evans is a fantastic pianist and his trio always sounds great. For me, it's about replayability. Is it going to be something that's going to stick with me, say, long after Record Store Day? For folks who love Bill Evans, they're probably going to say, yeah, I want it all. For me, I'm a little bit more of a skeptic, even though I love Bill Evans. All right, this next one up is the first one that's being released by Craft Recordings, which obviously always gets lots of attention from us music appreciators. The title is Gill Evans and 10. So this was originally put out on Prestige, catalog number 7120. There's a little bit of a larger lineup here, but a couple of notable folks. We got Steve Lacy on soprano, Jimmy Cleveland, Nick Stabulus, Paul Chambers. So there's a couple of interesting folks on this thing. What strikes me about this title is that the Record Store Day title is actually being presented in mono. This has recently been reissued, sort of a second reissue pressing by Analog Productions, and that edition, I believe, is in stereo. So this would be the first time that there's been a mono release, probably in quite some time. But anyway, like I said, Craft Recordings is doing it. It's probably going to be great quality. Single LP edition, quantity of 4,200. So there's going to be a lot of these things out there. In terms of the mastering process or remastering, well, it is being remastered by Kevin Gray at Coherent. The lacquers are cut from the original master tapes and pressed on 180 gram at RTI. Next up is Dexter Gordon, joined by Slide Hampton. This is A Day in Copenhagen, originally put out by MPS. It is a single LP, quantity of 1,000. So this one's going to be relatively scarce. Lineup includes Dizzy Reese, Kenny Drew, Niels Henning Orsted Peterson, and I guess I believe that's it. So, for me, I really do like Dexter Gordon. I happen to think that he was playing fantastic music and still being creative later in his life, which is when this recording is from. The original pressing of this isn't particularly scarce, I would say. So I think it's an interesting title for MPS to sort of resurrect for Record Store Day. But, what can you do? It's in a quantity of 1,000, and so there's not going to be many copies. My guess is that they're not going to have a problem selling them. Chico Hamilton is up next with his album The Master. This is the 50th anniversary edition of this album, and it is once again being put out by Craft Recordings. It's a single LP in a quantity of 2,000. So it was originally released by Stax Records. I have to confess, I have not been aware of this album. Never seen it before, and when I saw Chico Hamilton, who I'm very familiar with, but then I saw this record that was put out on Stax, I was like, man, that must have been a blind spot for me, especially putting an album of his out like that on Stax, maybe as like a sort of crossover kind of attempt. Perhaps it's not even filed in the jazz section at some local stores, and that's why I've never really come across it myself. This one is being remastered by Jeff Powell. Lacquers cut from the original tapes at Takeout Vinyl. Not familiar with that outfit. And it is being pressed in 180 gram in purple marble vinyl variety. All right, next one we've got is Gil Scott-Heron and Brian Jackson, and this is their album Winter in America, originally put out on Strata East Records. So this is the original pressing. Funnily enough, this is probably the most available out of any title. In fact, I would say it's definitely the most available of any title on Strata East Records. It's also probably goes for the least price. Although what I will say is that just a couple of years ago, you could find this thing all day and all night for $20. And lately, don't get me wrong, it hasn't increased in value as much as all of the other Strata East titles, but it's starting to get up there. It's starting to get a little bit more attention. And here's the thing, it really is great. They probably just pressed it in a large pressing quantity when it was originally put out, and that's why it's so available. So this is being put out for Record Store Day by Culture Factory USA. Single LP edition in a quantity of 3,000. They are going for the gatefold jacket, which this original pressing has as well. So my guess is that they're going to attempt to replicate that, but they're also going to be adding an obi strip on this thing, and it's going to be in what they're calling specialty color vinyl. I don't yet know exactly what that is, but that is the format that this is being released in. All right, so Ahmad Jamal is up next. This is Emerald City Nights Live at the Penthouse, 1966 to 1968. You may say, wait a second, this has already been released, hasn't it? Well, so the last Record Store Day, maybe even the last two Record Store Days, I'm trying to remember if they spaced volumes 1 and 2 out or if they were all in the same Record Store Day. But in any event, volumes 1 and 2 have been released. This is volume 3, so it is different. It's still being put out by Jazz Detective. This is a double LP format, I believe similar to the others, and it's in a quantity of 2,300, also 180 gram and a gatefold. So I remember talking about this release in the past, and I didn't pick either of those first two volumes up, but I will say that I heard good things. I will also say that was not a title that necessarily sold out, and you could still kind of find it after Record Store Day. I don't know if they've necessarily adjusted the pressing quantity for Volume 3, but in any event, for folks who got those first two volumes, obviously they're going to want to get the third and not sort of miss out on completing the set. Okay, so Charles Mingus is up next, and the album is called Incarnations. This is being put out on Candid. And the reason why I smile when I say that it's being put out by Candid is because they have not done a great job with their latest sort of list of reissues. They've been kind of going through, including Mingus titles and some others. They've been reissuing them from that late 50s Candid kind of release, the original time period that these titles were released. And the sound quality hasn't been great, and the jacket sort of caliber hasn't been great. And I want to say in the past they were doing some of these in color vinyl for Record Store Day, and I just haven't been impressed. And that's despite the fact that Bernie Grundman has been involved. So when they decided to put out Incarnations, which was not originally put out, by the way, in the 50s on that original Candid label, instead this is assembled from unreleased material. I'm a little bit of a skeptic. Okay, I'm going to say that right now, but I would be happy to be proven wrong, especially with Charles Mingus, who I tend to love. So this is going to be, let's see, a pressing quantity of 3,000. They're calling it a heavyweight sleeve. And once again, audio restored and remastered by Bernie Grunman, pressed on 180 gram vinyl. I'm going to leave that caveat out there, that kind of warning that I don't really know how it's going to sound. I haven't been impressed with what Candid's been doing lately. So for me anyway, that's going to be a wait and see. All right, so the next one up is, well, actually not this. The reason why I'm showing you this is because, the next Record Store Day release is related to this. So this is the Wynton Kelly Trio with Wes Montgomery, Smokin' at the Half Note, originally put out on Verve. Really fantastic lineup on this thing. You've got, Wynton Kelly, Wes Montgomery, obviously, and also Paul Chambers and Jimmy Cobb. Engineering was done by Rudy Van Gelder, originally recorded in 1965. So the next title that is being put out in Record Store Day is called Maximum Swing, the Unissued 1965 Half Note Recordings. This is being put out by Resonance Records. It has the same lineup, actually, with the addition of a few bassists. So it sounds like perhaps depending on the evening that they were playing at the Half Note, the bassist kind of subbed in and out. So you do have Jimmy Cobb and Paul Chambers, but sometimes Paul Chambers is replaced by Ron Carter, Herman Wright, and Larry Ridley. This is going to be in a triple LP format, so that's just a lot of content. But guess what? Wes Montgomery and Wynton Kelly, I think that this is pretty exciting stuff, especially because what made the album is fantastic. They're putting this out in a quantity of 3,000. 180 gram vinyl, and a gatefold jacket. Now, anytime you got a triple LP, you know that it's going to be a correspondingly high price point, and don't yet know exactly what that is. But this is one where that price point's really going to dictate whether I just immediately jump on it or not. I'm pretty optimistic though for this title. All right, believe it or not, there's 5 titles left. So the next one is a Oscar Peterson one, and it is called Con Alma, the Oscar Peterson Trio live in Lugano. 1964. This is being put out by Mac Avenue, and let's see, with Oscar Peterson, you've got Ray Brown and Ed Thigpen, which they really make a fantastic trio. There's been some other Oscar Peterson titles put out for Record Store Day that have sounded phenomenal, and so I'm really hoping that this one sort of falls in line with those. It's being put out on translucent light blue vinyl, which, in a quantity of 2,000, and it's this time it's just a single LP release. Okay, another live album. There's a lot of live albums in the jazz space for Record Store Day. I kind of wish that there was more studio. I wish there was more like audiophile grade studio stuff, but that's not, I guess that's not generally what we get for Record Store Day. So this next one is by Cal Jader, and it's called Catch the Groove, live at the Penthouse, 1963 to 1967. It is being put out by Jazz Detective as well, and this is also a triple LP in a quantity of 2,000. So supporting Jader on this title are Armando Peraza and Monk Montgomery. And across these 3 LPs, it's actually made up of 6 different performances, all recorded by a radio DJ for broadcast. It is going to be put out on 180 gram vinyl. This is one of those situations where the quality of the release is going to be very much dependent on how good of a job did Jazz Detective do in terms of finding the right material and presenting it in the right way. If history is any indication, they're going to do a fantastic job because they've done really great job with some of their prior releases, and so I do think that we can have some confidence. But triple LP is just a lot for radio broadcast of Cal Jader material. So we'll see how it goes. At the very least, this is a period of time where Jader had really pivoted kind of his style, I think, and he was playing a lot more interesting kind of soul-forward material. So there are reasons to be optimistic for this one, but we'll just have to see. This next one is by Real Gone Music. So for those of you who have been paying attention, Real Gone Music has gone through the process of, I think, reissuing every single title in the Black Jazz catalog. So what would they do for Record Store Day? Well, they are compiling the complete singles of Black Jazz records. So they're presenting this in a double LP format. It's in a quantity of 1,750, and there are 15 tracks, 15 singles that supported, each of the albums in the Black Jazz catalog. So what else? It's going to have a gatefold jacket. They are pressing it on what they're calling tawny orange vinyl with black swirl. So very much in the mode of the colors that you'd expect to see on the original label. And this includes material from Gene Russell, Walter Bishop Jr., Doug Karn, Rudolph Johnson, Calvin Keys, Chester Thompson, Kelly Patterson, and Cleveland Eaton. I think I named all of them. Well, you also have Gene Karn, right? Doug and Gene Karn. I'm trying to think. I think that's it. Anyway, this is kind of interesting. I think that if you've already gone through the process of buying all of those titles that Reelgone reissued, maybe you don't need it. But if you want kind of that, that it's almost like that mixtape, right, of the greatest hits from the catalog, then this could be a good option. And certainly if anybody decided that they didn't want those Reelgone titles and are now disappointed they didn't get them, here you go. You get your sort of best of with these 15 tracks. All right, so there are just two more. This next one is one by Jazz Dispensary, which is a sub-label of Craft Recordings, which is itself a part of Concord Group. Anyway, this is Jazz Dispensary, and it is titled At the Movies. This is a single LP release in a quantity of 3,600. So what material do you have on this? By the way, folks should be used to what Jazz Dispensary does, I think, for Record Store Day. They pull compilations from many albums that, they typically do a great job actually of curating that playlist and compiling them around a specific theme for Record Store Day. And so this theme is At the Movies. And so effectively what you have is songs that were in movie soundtracks, right? So some of the artists that you have represented here include Melvin Van Peebles, Isaac Hayes, Booker T, and others. It's being put out on purple marble vinyl. It's possibly we're going to get one of those die-cut sleeves that Jazz Dispensary typically does for these volumes. We'll have to see. Most importantly about this album, and a reason why I'm particularly excited about this release, is you have the theme to Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song, which is simply titled Sweetback's Theme. Phenomenal movie. If you have not seen it, it is very controversial for obvious reasons if you see the uncut version. But it is a very, very influential movie. In some ways, sort of kicked off the blaxploitation genre, and it's just a phenomenal piece of music, right? And that's what you get to hear here is the music. So that's one reason anyway to pick it up. The original soundtrack to that album, or excuse me, to that movie, is fairly valuable, and more importantly, it's really difficult to find in decent shape. I've owned a few copies and I've inevitably sold them because they simply weren't enjoyable to listen to. I'm excited to hear the theme here in this Jazz Dispensary release. And the final title that's going to be released is called Red Hot and Raw Nuclear War. This is being put out by Red Hot Organization. It's in a quantity of 1,100, a double LP release. And what this is a tribute to Sun Ra. They're actually calling it first in a series. So I'm not sure exactly what they might, what they have planned. I do think that this album has been released at least in digital form, and there's been a remix that's been put out. But in any event, I believe this is the first time it's being put out on vinyl. I'm not positive on that. So what do you get here in this tribute to Sun Ra? Well, it's a tribute to Sun Ra and some of the musicians that you have who actually sort of lead the individual tracks. You've got Irreversible Entanglements that does one track. Let's see, is it Angel Bat Daweed who does a couple of tracks in here? You have Georgia Ann Muldrow. There's like 5 or 6 tracks or something, and like I said, it's a tribute to Sun Ra. For me, I'm not the biggest fan of Sun Ra. I saw this on there and I thought it was kind of interesting. And maybe this is one that I'll probably preview just because I don't really know what I'm getting into with the music, nor with this particular label. All right, so that's it. Those are the 17 jazz titles that are being put out in the US for Record Store Day. If you live in Europe, there's going to be some other titles, right? I briefly looked up the UK list, and I think there's a title by Ben Webster. I think they're releasing Bob James's 2, which originally came out on CTI. But otherwise, if you're in the US, those are the 17 titles. So general comments about this list. Like I said earlier, I wish that there was a little bit more in the sort of audiophile studio album reissue kind of space, as opposed to all of these live sessions. and sort of the multi-disc, right? But I think that labels are probably looking at this like an opportunity to bring people in with music that that can be limited to such small quantities, right? Even like 3,500 is small quantity. So they don't want to necessarily waste the opportunity with a release that could command, say, 5,000 copies or 10,000 copies. So maybe that's one reason. Maybe another is that you tend to have slightly smaller labels that are putting out titles for Record Store Day, and they don't necessarily have the rights to some of those big sort of flashy releases. Now, obviously you do have an exception here with Craft Recordings that has access to an immense catalog, but do they really need to create scarcity through Record Store Day at this point? Like, probably not. They could probably just leave some of their better titles perhaps for full-blown releases. I mean, you do have Gill Evans and 10, but even that's somewhat of an unusual choice to do it in mono when the stereo was just put out. So I don't know. There's probably a variety of reasons that are, beyond me. I'm not in the industry, that sort of dictate which ones that they choose for Record Store Day versus which ones they hold back. So if I'm thinking back through the list that I have here and which titles that I'm maybe more excited about than others, and I kind of gave you some of my feedback as we were going. What I said is that I don't really need later period Chet. The Marion Brown title, I love Marion Brown, but it's a little bit too experimental. The Dave Brubeck Quartet, I don't know. I have a bunch of Brubeck, but I think that 1959 time period could be interesting, especially if Brubeck Editions, that family label, does a good job with it. Eric Dolphy's Iron Man should be at the top of everybody's lists. I mean, I already have a copy, so it's probably not going to be at the top of mine. But if Culture Factory USA does a good job with this reissue, that's just a phenomenal album, and I think a lot of folks will get excited about that. Bill Evans, not for me, although I know it's for a lot of people. Let's see. I already have Gil Scott Heron, but that's going to be a title that, again, if Culture Factory USA does a good job, grab that one. So I think for me, looking across this entire list, the one that really jumps out to me in terms of what I might be interested in buying is that Wes Montgomery, Wynton Kelly trio titled Maximum Swing, put out by Resonance Records. Triple LP, like I said, I'll have to see how much it costs. But that's the one that really excites me. I may end up picking that Jazz Dispensary title up, really for the Sweet Sweetbacks theme done by Melvin Van Peebles, because it's fantastic. And then, those are probably the two, right? So it's Jazz Dispensary, and then it's the Wynton Kelly thing. But, maybe the idea with this list is that there's something for everyone, depending on the style of music that you like and the era. There is a pretty wide swing, right, from the 50s going on through, at least the 70s with this music. Well, and Red Hot and Raw is obviously newly recorded music. So, I don't know. There's nothing, you don't exactly have like a Quiet Kenny kind of like, huge title here like we had a couple of years ago. But this isn't the worst. This isn't the worst Record Store Day, release list I've ever seen. And the fact that there's a couple in here that I'm pretty excited about, I think it's a good thing. So anyway, those are my thoughts. I'd be curious what other titles people are excited about, or any other thoughts, I guess, about this list of 17. But there you have it. Those are the jazz titles coming out on Black Friday 2023. So, all right, that's it. I guess I will see you all next time.